Hey guys, this is Dean Gravina. I'm here with Nathan from Digital Next. We're going to be talking all things SEO, so how the SEO landscape has changed within the last 10 years. We're going to be talking about link building, but most importantly, we're going to be talking about how SEO has changed over the last 10 years and what it is like now in today's economy. Things obviously getting, a little bit more tight for businesses. Businesses are questioning, should I be running Google ads? Should I be running Facebook ads? Should I be doing SEO? So I guess I'd like to start off with just introducing Nathan and getting a little bit more information about how you started Digital Next
Yeah, so at uni in the UK, my uni was quite strong advocates of doing a year in placement, obviously with the theory of education and then practical implementation. My friend Justin Blacker just started an agency, SEO Next, back 2008 or 9. The premise of SEO optimization, someone searches for something on Google, your website comes up and clients pay us to get higher on the search results. To a young person, like internet savvy, that sounds like the future. Someone was really interested in asking to do a placement. Obviously let me come in, graduated, came back, said, I want to move to Australia. Can I start the brand here? Something that he'd always wanted to do himself, but didn't necessarily have the time with his UK venture. And booked the flights, did a bit of groundwork, and off we went.
So obviously you've moved from the UK, you've just landed in Australia. What was your first week like in Australia?
Well, it's hectic really, when you move to a new country. I think there's a lot of adrenaline. I think for us, really, it was kind of underestimated, kind of getting a rental place. I think we booked an Airbnb for 2 weeks.
Yeah, right. Was it Airbnb for 10 years ago?
10 years ago,
Didn't even know that.
And then we had a 2-week window before we had to be out to find a place to live. And I remember turning up in South Melbourne to a place, and there must have been about 50 people there, and we'd already viewed a few, and we were like, oh no. And thankfully the business put a letter together, said they're going to back us, and the lady accepted it, and got a bit lucky.
And that's where you actually started, in that rental?
Yeah. So the business started in the rental, and then when we had a bit more revenue, kind of looked to get an office space.
How many people were in the rental, and how long were you there?
5 of us in a 2-bedroom.
Yeah.
So it was me, my girlfriend, Chris Tipper, who brought his girlfriend out, who helped in the first 3 months, and then my brother was on the couch. So it was quite hectic.
So you're working, so you're obviously living with family, friends, and then you're working in the same place.
Yeah.
And but not all of them were working in the business.
No. So there's only 2 of us working on the business.
Yeah, right.
The others were a couple on a holiday, my brother trying to find his way in air conditioning, and then my girlfriend obviously trying to start her life. And then when we realised under those conditions, you need an office eventually, and that was probably one of the serendipitous moments in the journey, as we got a desk in this office here on Buckhurst Street. Managed to land in amongst a group of seasoned pros, a few from big agency backgrounds. One was vice president of sales for Ford Australia, and a media buyer, photographer, all at the back end of their career, but very experienced, and they just kind of helped guide us in those formative years of the business.
So you were telling me before that you're quite fortunate. You did have backing from the UK, in a sense that you obviously had a couple of clients from the UK. You were mentioning that obviously you're doing night shifts in the UK before you actually landed here. In terms of obviously trying to get clients in the UK, in Australian clients in the UK. So you actually set yourself up a little bit. You had enough revenue coming in before you actually made the move. So when you made the move, it was a little bit less stressful for you.
A little bit, but it was only a few $1,000s. I think me and my partner at the time, Lawrence, I think we were sharing a salary for the first 6 months.
Yeah.
But the benefit obviously coming from the UK is, we were converting that salary to pounds, and it was kind of coming out at what we'd get paid in the UK.
Yeah.
But obviously by Australian terms, it's a little bit different. So yeah.
Yeah. So sharing a salary, 5 people in a 2-bedroom
Flat, almost.
flat.
Yeah.
And I guess the interesting thing for me is like talking about this because, there's people wanting to start an agency or start their own business and they wouldn't really go through those measures. You know what I mean? There's some people like obviously like yourself that you're doing it tough for a short period of time. But, there's a lot of people starting their agency. They're still in their sort of mum's bedroom. They've still got that security. Like what was the hardest thing for you when you were actually doing that?
I think it's initially your family and friends, obviously that network, safety network that you've got, familiarity. When you first come over, obviously there's a big adrenaline dump in a new country, but then when that kind of wears off and the reality hits home, I think that's the difficult part.
Yeah.
My advice would be is like if you're a young person, you don't really think of those issues at the time.
Yeah.
It's only in retrospect that you kind of if I was my age now and I was going to do this sort of thing, you'd probably be a bit more conscious and a bit more worried about, everything that you're doing. But when you're young, you just kind of get away with it. You just go and do it. You just kind of deal with it. And, failure is obviously something that always lingers in your mind, but...
Yeah. You didn't really have much to lose anyway.
Well, that's what,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Look, obviously integrity, I would personally have seen myself as failing had it not succeeded, but I remember when I set off in the journey and my goal was, if I can have 100k in the bank and an Australian passport, I would see that as a success.
As a win.
I've achieved that, so
cool.
I've got to be happy.
Yeah. So you're in that bedroom, and then what? I think for me, out of my interest, and I'm sure other people would love to hear this story. When were you able to sort of get to the offer stage and to actually start hiring your first employees? Do you remember who your first employee was? Besides yourself and...
No, because that's what I mean. This business was probably Stephen Lord. He was probably first, proper employee, and we got to Steve because we obviously built the revenue. Yeah. We all worked under, market salaries to get the sweat equity in.
Yeah.
Got Steve on board, and it was me, Lawrence, and Steve as like kind of that initial trifecta.
Yeah.
But we've always had, the benefit of what we've had is friends like Lawrence, people from the UK that have come over. So it's always, we didn't really get to that proper employment of employees until maybe a couple of years down the line. So there's a lot of sweat equity at the beginning.
In the beginning, yeah, cool. So I guess like going from there, so you built it up, and so it took you. So you reckon it took you a couple of years to sort of build a good client portfolio?
Yeah, definitely. I think what I always say to people, the thing about the Australian market is because of the high salaries. The benchmark that you've got to build from is a lot higher than it is from, say, the UK, where I'm from.
Yeah.
I think we compare our salary base here to the UK and how many staff we've got, and it's probably 40% more manpower in the UK for the same pay.
Sure.
So you obviously have to get to a certain level before
you can actually hire
actually start building, an actual agency, and that probably took 3 to 4 years. Bearing in mind that there was 3 of us that we wanted to get our salaries to a position
first,
and then when we're ready, you kind of springboard from there.
A segue into is talking about I guess if you want to talk about things that have changed within SEO. So you actually talked about ranking your own agency's website first. Yeah. But like in your opinion, and I know you're obviously not so much in the weeds now, as you probably were when you started, but what do you think has been the significant change, or even has there been?
Like massively so. I think, my early days in SEO was like just pre-Penguin, pre-Panda updates.
Yeah.
And I think one of the benchmarks of our agency success has always been the link building component.
Yeah.
Remember the UK used to rank #1 for SEO. Back in the day, it used to generate a lot of leads for us, and that was just purely on link spam volume.
Yeah.
You know, we did get hit by the Penguin update, as did many people in the industry.
Yeah.
I think, you know, the #1 change is, you know, quality over quantity. Used to be very much a volume game, wasn't as many moving parts, whereas now, you know, there's so much resource power that has to go into running a good SEO campaign that unfortunately kind of prices a lot of small businesses out. I remember back in the day when I first went in, SEO was kind of like such a valuable channel for a small business, as you could find your niche.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't many paid ads, it wasn't shopping, it wasn't map packs, you know, it was just a clean search results. And if you had your keywords and, you know, you knew what you could rank for in your niche, you could carve a very successful marketing strategy out of it. Whereas now there's so many things that goes into that ranking equation that Google's just a big business favourite now. Like, you know, all your branding, your content, your social, you know, you kind of have to, your reviews, you know, EAT now, like with business, you know, small businesses, they don't have the time or the resource power to kind of drive those cogs that really get the traction on an SEO campaign.
Yeah, for sure. I think going back to, obviously you were like the pioneer, in my opinion. I mean, other people watching this might say otherwise, but I think you guys, from what my understanding is, you were the first Melbourne-based agency to really start a unique. Obviously, anyone can buy links on marketplace, you know, on any marketplace. Everyone knows what the marketplaces are, but I think you guys were the first agency to really bring that to a different level.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Look, yeah, I do agree. I think like our link building isn't anything spectacular. I know that, you know, when I look at it, this, you know, PR SEO is huge now, and, you know, getting those really top tier links, but you kind of need the connections into the editors and stuff. But in terms of just like your rudimentary, you know, guest post link building, something that we always did really well. And it was another, you know, and in business, I think, you know, if you speak to anyone who's been successful, there's always those key moments that kind of help drive your venture forward. And for us, it was quite a number of years ago. We got a big lead through the UK, actually, from a big agency in Sydney called DGM. They wanted a huge link order.
Yeah.
And luckily the UK passed it to us, and, you know, they scaled it. It was like 1, 2, 5, and then just before Christmas, it was like multiple tens of thousands of dollars. And we were like, yeah, these guys are obviously onto something here. And then slowly started to roll that out into our front end clients.
Right.
And then developed it over time. And, you know, for us, it's just about focusing on good prospects, good content, and not being stingy on the sites that you go to.
And I think that's the interesting thing, because like we know SEO as like content on your website. We know it as blog posts, but you guys really flipped that around, where you brought the back end to the front.
And at the time,
no one else was doing that.
No, not on the volume that we were, like, and that's where we got a lot of results. Is, you know, we've developed our on-page and our technical SEO a lot over the last few years, but we were very reliant on the link building component. Yeah. You know, and through 2016 all the way up until probably 2021, 2022, you could almost brute force results through good link building alone. Yeah. Now, obviously, Google's adapted, and you kind of need the on-page to match up for the link value to come through. But yeah, it definitely was a game changer for us, 100%.
I think that in itself is a really big thing to talk about, because when everyone's going one way and everyone's doing the same thing, you only had to change one element to stand out in the crowd. You know what I mean? And to this day, I actually don't know if anyone. Obviously, there are now new little pop-ups coming in and out. of the game, but you guys have been the consistent one to actually bring the back end of SEO to the front and to more of a client, actually client facing what you guys are doing in the back end, because most other agencies don't actually reveal the work that you guys do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's just not something that clients are really interested in.
No.
Well, some clients, but you guys had found your sort of niche.
Yeah.
That clients that wanted to know about what this is and saw the value of it.
Yeah, and just on the point of being, finding a niche, I think, we came up with in a period where there was a lot of good agencies actually that were rising at the time that we were around, very aggressive agencies that could market themselves very well.
Yeah.
And there was kind of a pivotal point a few years ago where digital kind of exploded into a load of different channels, and we kind of made the decision, we want to just focus on search marketing, SEO, PPC, and obviously link building fell into that. Because, me personally, we haven't overly invested in Digital Next as a brand, and I knew that we couldn't compete with some of these other agencies, and that was, that niche of just search and link building was something that's kind of helped us kind of go forward to this day. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the interesting thing is for that is like you can't really, like some people will try and sit and figure out like how do I create a niche, but that opportunity was presented to you because of your connection to the UK and what happened from that client that you just spoke about. I guess so going back to like what the actual idea is of this video is, you mentioned before that SEO was a channel that I guess you could sort of compete. You could really sort of compete in 10 years ago if you're a local business.
Yeah.
You could jump in. Obviously, the investment wasn't huge, and you could actually still you could get results. Do you still feel that today for let's say if a business is watching this, which there probably would be, they're watching this and they're saying, well, my Facebook ads costs are sort of increasing, my Google ads costs are increasing, like should I actually like what am I supposed to do? Do I actually go with SEO, or is it going to be too expensive as well?
Yeah, I think it's all dependent on what the business is to start with. I think you've obviously got to do your market research. Is there enough search volume? What's the competitiveness like? But then a key thing, obviously, where we're at now is, we're a slightly bigger agency, and our kind of base level packages, knowing of what work now needs to go into an SEO campaign.
Yeah.
You probably price out a lot of smaller businesses.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, and there is opportunity out there to find freelancers that are going to work for a smaller retainer and kind of put those yards in. But I think the difficult thing that business owners have is like, deciphering through who knows what they're on about. And because you get a lot of people who go, I can sell you an $800 campaign, and then they're 6-12 months in and they've not gone anywhere and they've pissed all that money up the wall. So sometimes it is a case of, it might be actually worth investing a little bit more and going with a proven agency, as long as the viability is there, or you go down the route of finding a freelancer or someone who's at the start of their agency journey who's hungry to grow and will put the time into your business that's required to get the cut through. They're probably the two options that I'd advise.
Yeah, I mean, so what you're saying is there are still, like you can offshore everything for $100 a month, but the question you need to ask yourself is like, what are you actually going to get? What are you going to receive? And then that really goes against sort of measurability, which SEO is not like paid advertising where you put in $1, you're estimating $2 out. Facebook ads it never used to be like that. Facebook ads was more like just awareness, right? But now really you can sort of aim for a particular ROAS or a particular cost per click or CPA, right? Especially with e-commerce now, it's really, really good. So I guess so more on that, I guess. So what are you saying? Are you saying that
Well, I think I'll come in because I think I know what you're trying to say is I think SEO is one of them channels, it's almost like fortune favours the bold.
Yeah.
SEO won't pay immediate returns, but if you invest and you do succeed, it is still by far and away one of the best channels in terms of ROAS. Particularly not at the start of the campaign, but when you get further down the line and it starts to kicking dip, it's just almost exponential returns. You know, obviously you're limited by your market size, but it's not like paid or Facebook where, you know, to get more you have to spend more. Is you know, if it's working, it's then you move on to another area, another area, you just continually grow the beast. And I think that's what a lot of business owners struggle to kind of grasp, is they want immediate results. And that's obviously playing to your big tech companies because they want you to go down the paid route and you pay this and I'll give you this. Whereas, you know, SEO doesn't always work and it doesn't always drive the returns, but when it does work, it works really well.
I want your opinion on this. I think, so I look at it like SEO is like giving you compounding interest.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's compounding.
Yeah.
Because what you pay this month is going to stack to the next month. It's going to stack and stack and stack and stack. Whereas paid, it's like renting.
It's like being on crack. Okay. It's like, you know, once you're in it, it's like you got to keep paying to keep getting the results. And as soon as you switch that tap off, it's like boom.
No, I think that's right, and it's like it's exactly like you know, it's like renting a house, right? As soon as you stop paying the rent,
you're evicted.
You're out. You're evicted. You know, and that's exactly. And here's the thing, right? You're obviously being controlled by the landlord. You know, if they want to raise the rent, well, they're going to raise the rent, and you're going to have to pay more.
There's elements of that with SEO though as well, like through algorithmic updates.
Sure.
You know, you're not always in full control, but it's more controllable than, you know, obviously turning the tap off and on.
Right, but I guess, you know, if you look at the last 3 years, and for someone who's a business owner watching this thinking, well, what's the percentage of, if you think about it from a cost per click perspective on Google Ads, I remember local campaigns, let's say a tree lopping campaign, the cost per click used to be $2 3 years ago.
Very expensive.
It's gone 12, 15, 20. That increase has been maybe, who knows, 10 times in some industries, but I don't see that there's been a 10 times increase in SEO.
No.
You know, obviously it is,
I agree. It's
just
not,
naturally as there's more marketplace competition.
Definitely, like paid, like 100% paid is definitely more expensive now than it ever was. You know, and I always go back to like just being the big tech favouring big businesses, like economies of scale, like the more media spend you've got, like the easier it is to get results. You know, if you're a small business trying to go in with a small media spend, it's like, where do you actually place that when you're competing against guys who can just kind of push you out? So, you know, paid is obviously a viable channel, but it's definitely more competitive now and definitely more expensive than it used to be. Same with Facebook, you know, back in the day when Facebook, for some campaigns in the right business, like the cost per acquisition, you know, you're talking single figure digits. You know, $5 a lead type stuff, whereas, you know, you don't really see that as much these days.
Yeah. Let's flip it on the other side. What about, because we spent a lot of time talking about small businesses. What about actually like large, like I've worked on some pretty big campaigns. We've actually worked on, when we were working on MYOB, single touch payroll. You remember back in the day?
When it first came out.
Yeah. So that was, I mean, so you've got your local, you know, that's sort of our perspective on the local side, but then you've also got the other side where, you know, we're both actually currently working on large, massive campaigns. And then, you know, when you're obviously having, you know, typically you're not talking to a CEO about this, you're talking to a marketing manager so what's your sort of concept on, I guess, evaluating SEO at a large scale for larger organizations when a lot of the marketing managers are really focused on paid, aren't they? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, like to an extent, it depends on what the company is. I think those that have kind of gone through those times of understanding and appreciating SEO will always continue to do it. I I think it is a little bit easier for the bigger businesses because, when you've got your paid firing, you've got traditional media, you've got your brand searches that go into it, you've got your socials, your PR, and then you're doing SEO in and amongst all that activity. It just makes it easier to kind of garner results from it. And, the bigger boys, you touched on, you're not dealing with the stakeholders, so they're not as emotionally invested as the smaller businesses.
Yeah.
So you kind of get a better relationship because you're a marketer, they're a marketer. It's almost like, you're sharing a common goal. Whereas the smaller businesses, when you're dealing with the business owners, they might go from week to week depending on, they don't really understand it as more, it's a bit more emotional investment, it can be more difficult.
Yeah.
But saying again, what I've always found with the bigger businesses as well, especially the ambitious ones, is, we've had campaigns that have had 40% year-on-year growth, but then they've kind of got to the limits and then they've gone, right, well, we need the next thing and we don't offer it, and they've just left us. So, those more ambitious companies, they're good to work with and it's good money, but, if you're not a big agency that offers everything under the sun, there's a ceiling to how far you can take them.
But I guess in saying that though, you think about today's economy, what a big business is trying to do. They're trying to optimize cost per acquisition. And that's where the same thing really applies, where you think about on a large scale, these larger businesses are just going to keep on throwing down on Facebook. And there's going to be there's no point where, what am I trying to say? It's like a bottomless pool. They've just got to keep on throwing cash down for it to work.
Yeah, I think where I see it is when you get to the bigger stages, it's less about. Obviously, cost per acquisition is important, and when you're a small business, medium business, it's about what's your ROAS. Whereas I see a lot of the bigger companies, it's more about brand awareness and prestige, and it's just about maximum visibility, keeping the brand at the forefront of the customer's mind. And you get campaigns and leads that are spending a lot of money and they're not really getting a good return. Or you look at certain channels and why are they doing that? But when you're a brand, it's solidifying that brand retention. Which obviously, isn't direct cost per acquisition, but it still has merit in its own right within their complete marketing equation.
So obviously we've just touched on, SEO and I guess from a small business perspective, we've spoken about it from a larger business perspective as well. But really, the next part, what we want to discuss is link building. And link building is a really, really big part of an SEO campaign. And I guess talking about there's different types of link building. There's if you don't know what link building is, it's basically one website that points to your website. So an external website, that could be a news website, that could be a local directory, it could be yellow pages pointing to your website. And I guess what I want to really touch on is how important is it, and how is there a way to track results for potential clients or potential businesses that want to partake in SEO? Is there a correlation, and can you track it between link building and rankings and revenue? Is it even possible?
Yeah, we personally just go off keyword, it's old school, but still keyword rankings, higher up, more click-throughs you get.
Yeah.
It is obviously still hugely important. It's not as important as it once was. I think now there's other factors that need to be in play before the link building truly adds value.
Yeah.
But premise that I like, you got to remember the algorithm is based on link entities at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of spam over the years, and Google have kind of clamped down on it. But if you've got 10 sites on page one, they've all got similar on page, similar site speed, architecture, technical SEOs on point. How do you differentiate between 1 to 10?
Yeah.
And often it's that link value that comes into play. And if you get good endorsements from different sites, that does add weight. We ran a campaign back end of last year for a friend's business. They've got a nice little diary. So they're competing against Kiki K and stuff like that. And we really just built links for 4 months. Like they didn't really do any other on-site strategies, and that link building alone was enough to kind of propel them to, you know, hover around the 2nd and 3rd position. So there's still, you know, credibility in that standalone service adding value to a business if everything else is in order.
I guess like I've had people ask me, how many links do I need to rank on the first page? How many links do I need?
Yeah, that's kind of like...
How do we answer that question? Do you know what I mean? Because it is a common question that people want to... That really, like how would you answer that without...
I don't think that question, like, personally, like, you know, others may beg to differ, but I don't think that is a question that can be answered because you don't ultimately know what the algorithm says and how much weight they deem and what criteria they give to one individual link. Like you can obviously test if I build this link, see what movement I have. You know, you can, there's certain factors that go into that, but then what happens if there's algorithmic changes, like you're doing other stuff on site, someone else might do something that knocks them back. There's so many factors that goes into where you rank on the page that because it's not a standalone, because it's not a stagnant channel, you can't really pinpoint what it is. So you've got to kind of take a holistic overview of, you know, over a long period of time, what activity am I doing and what effect is that having on my visibility?
So to a client, potential client watching this, that's do you know what I mean? They'd still really want to know, hey, you're talking about link building. So if the answer is it cannot be, there's no amount. We can't say 1, we can't say 5, we can't say 10 or 100 links. What is it that clients should be looking for when we are building these links that we're seeing results?
Well, what I'm looking for, obviously, when a client comes to me is like, can you afford an investment of, you know, whatever it is, 1,000, 2, 3, 5, depending on the business, for a sustained period of time, without it affecting your overall business operation. If you're not in that position, you're probably not ready for link building. I get a lot of inquiries like link building, and I look at it, they've not even got any on-page foundations. It's like, why would you want to look? It's like they've read something about, link building is important, I'm going to need it, but I don't necessarily have the foundations to do it. There's also the argument of, you know, brand building, you know, growing your domain. There's the direct correlation between increasing rankings, but building your authority over time, rising tide effect of your whole site growing. But yeah, in terms of a good link is, you know, for me, it's more about relevancy now, like niche relevancy of what you do, what the site is that you're getting a link from, and how that link is contextually inserted into the content. You know, back in the day, and even now, like a lot of people go DA, like high DA, like, you know, those are kind of valid metrics, but they're third-party metrics at the end of the day. They're not Google algorithmic.
Not Google's metrics.
And you can see time and time again sites with high DR that have no traffic, and sites with low DR that gets traffic. So you need to look at kind of where the traffic's coming from. Like, is it keywords that are relevant to what the site's about? And I saw a competitor, actually, not in Australia, but I think they're from the UK, that did a test on, you know, increasing their DR by just getting a load of like really low value links built to the homepage, and it almost doubled their DR. You know, it's such an artificial metric.
That's a great, I guess, another point, because I mean, a lot of clients, and maybe some of your clients as well, they're buying based on DA. Do you know what I mean? It has nothing to do with DA, and so there's real 2 big concerns when link building. Well, 3 that you've said. Do you have the budget? Is your site set up? Is the business going to be able to continue, and will this affect the business? If you're investing 1, 5, 10, 20,000 a month on link building, will that have an impact on the business? If it will, no. And then the next question is, if you do know a little bit about, so the problem is with people that know a little bit about link building, it's actually more dangerous than them not knowing anything about it. Because as soon as you start to read these articles online about DA, I remember this was even before I was doing SEO. I don't know if you remember the Hoth.
Yeah.
They used to promote DA50. And before I started SEO, I was like, wow, like DA50, how do I get a DA50?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of clients that still, they want the DA50, but it could be a toxic website.
Yeah.
You know, so there's that aspect of it. It's that.
Well, you've got that in, you know, if you've been in the industry, you know, drop domains, you know, Google have, you know, hit it pretty hard recently. You know, a lot of sites have dropped off, but there was instances of, you know, someone had a domain from 20 years ago, ran a business for 10 years, they no longer renewed their URL, or they sold, and then people would pick these URLs up and relaunch a site on it, and you know, Google would see that domain, it'd go bang, here's a DA50 site, and then they'd sell that as almost like a content farm. And I think it's still a valid tactic if you're going to use a domain that's niche relevant. You know, if you pick up an old restaurant URL and you want to launch a restaurant on it, that's fine. But you know, people were launching domains on completely different niches, and that was a way to kind of fast track that process. But yeah, like it's the thing with link building now, it's just more about quality over quantity in my mind.
I think the only way to really track it is it's like a piece of real estate, right? You buy a property and it's an investment property. You're not going to see the results next month.
No.
You're not going to see the property's increased $10,000, $100,000, unless you do a renovation and then you're flipping it, which is a completely different story, right? Now, the way I see it is that when you're doing link building, you've got to give it time, and the metrics that you can look out for are, as you said before, rankings. If you're targeting a particular page with your links, are those target keywords increasing over a period of time? So over 3, 6, 12, 18 months time, are you seeing an increase in rankings? That's great. If you are, even if it's one position, then that's a telltale that you actually, what we're doing is working. But I guess in terms of traffic, right, like I guess clients will say, oh, we're doing all this link building, but I'm not seeing much traffic. Well, rankings and traffic is a completely different story again. So you mustn't get really confused. I think that's a topic for another time. But to sort of wrap up, where do you think, you know, I think we've actually discussed a lot, haven't we?
Yeah, where do you think link building is going to go?
Well,
that's always an age-old question, because link building was dead fucking 5 years ago, according to some sources.
So I think what you have said today is that links were a little bit different 10 years ago to what they are today, but they're still a very important part of the strategy in combination with on-page. But where do you see, and then we'll make this sort of the last section, where do you see SEO going with the introduction of ChatGPT and all this like algorithmic personalized search results where you type in a prompt and you get exactly what you want? It's a really cliche question, but like, do you think there will be a point where SEO is officially dead?
I do, to be honest, eventually. You know, Google would have to probably move away from that core foundation of the algorithm, because it is link-based still at the end of the day. You know, and they require obviously the entities to understand like the hierarchy of sites on the web. But yeah, I do think SEO will change drastically, but it's still a way away yet, in my opinion. You know, we always talk about when you're in the industry and you kind of see these new things coming out and you kind of see where it's heading, but you've got to put yourself in the consumer's shoes, in the business, like they're not in the industry. It's like the Lagarde effect of actually that coming through to reality is often delayed from an internal perspective. Like we know, but you know, the adoption of it will take time. And you know, what I say is like Google, like they took an AI, like they talk a good game about where they're heading it, but you know, if you just use your own senses, like there's times when I'll do basic searches. I remember doing a search the other day about cheap places to eat in Cairns,
Yeah.
And Google brought up in the map packs a second listing, and it was not a cheap place.
Yeah.
And they'd actually highlighted not cheap, even though my search term was cheap. And it just proves that, you know,
they're not quite there.
They're not quite there yet already. So to bring all this other stuff into the equation, like, you know, and this is what I was talking about at the start about, you know, it favours big businesses. It's like with SG and all that, you're going to have all these like brand endorsements, like social signals, like people talking about your product, like product evaluation pieces, like, you know, and it's hard for small businesses to kind of replicate that. So, you know, that's my worry, is like where the algorithm's heading. Is it like, is it gonna make it even harder still for small businesses to compete, and more importantly, to even get off the ground? Because the bigger you are as a company, like the more of that you can create, the more that the AI can feed off that information. You know, particularly for product related searches, like that's going to be affected first. You know, when you're talking, say, like, an electrician in a suburb, how's that AI going to know the difference between X and Y as to who's the better plumber? You know, I think the B2B services might be all right for a little bit longer than, say, products related, where you've got a lot of, you know, reviews out there, a lot of YouTube videos, you know, people on forums talking about stuff like the Reddit partnership, you know, there's a lot of content on there. So like, I think the e-commerce space might be affected before, say, the B2B service space will be.
I think my opinion on that is, like, people don't like change.
Definitely.
If you think about what Google is it's still the same. And we've been having this conversation for the last 10 years. Is Google dead? Is SEO dead? You know, but we're still here today, and at the core of it, nothing has changed. I think that's the whole...
It's just how you go about it.
Exactly. That's the whole, I guess, wrap up from today. In my opinion, nothing has changed in the last 10 years. Yes, things have been improved. How you've gone about it has changed. The tactics have changed, but when you type in cheap places to eat, you get 10 results. You know, a variation of that. You know, how do you get there? You've got to produce good content and links. And that's pretty much...
I think my parting thing on that is as well, like, you know, I'm someone who personally likes to do my own research, and I think it all depends on the user. Are you going to be in a position where you allow the AI to make the decisions for you, or are you still someone who's believe that your rationale decision making is more effective than the AI? You know, I still think that AI is going to be years away before it can fully nail that to give complete trust to the user. I know some people will, because you know, humans are lazy at the end of the day, like they want things easy. But personally, you know, I like to do my own research, and I still use them core search results, obviously paid maps, etc. But you know, the foundations are still pretty much the same.
Good to chat. Thanks for jumping on.
Cheers, Dean.